Hello, dear viewer, dear listener. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe, your host of this show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We've just recently emerged out of COVID, and if there's one thing everybody has realized, that the importance of farming has been, magnetized, has been increased exponentially just by the experience of COVID. So in that light, I thought it is important to invite a farmer entrepreneur to come and share with us some aspects about farming and to see how we can become agropreneurs and get more involved in agropreneurship, if there's such a word. He'll define it for you in greater detail. My guest is Lucky Modikoane, who is going to talk in detail about this subject. Welcome to our studio, Mr. Modikoane.
Thank you, Mr. Mogobe, for having me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Modikoane, can we start with defining the subject we're going to discuss? We're going to talk about the re-evolution of the farming culture. The re-evolution of farming culture. Can you define the topic and break it down so that the viewer understands what we're talking about?
Absolutely, sir. When we address the words re-evolution instead of revolution, we're talking about a cycle, because it's something that is happening again. A re is repeat. Now, agriculture has never stopped evolving. From the moment that we stopped focusing on agriculture and went into mining, right? It continued to evolve to date, whereby we no longer need land to do plantations because we got hydroponics. It has evolved to that stage. Now, it's now time for a re-evolution of the entire culture of farming.
Okay, I guess from that I'm going to ask you, what's the hydroponics?
Hydroponics is water farming. It's water plantations, whereby you don't need land, but there's a bit of a science, if I may say, right, of the water nurturing the seeds into an actual plant. Yeah.
What is your background and how did you get into farming, or farming entrepreneurship, or agropreneurship?
I got into agropreneurship by default, Mr. Mogobe. It was through a series of failures in ventures. Right. For 15 years, I've been trading dogs, canines, and then I sold off the dogs, went into a butchery, failed in the butchery. While I was in the butchery, I'd go out, go and purchase cattle, right? Come back, sell them in the butchery, but I made a loss. So it collapsed and failed, right? Which now led me to rather study my losses as to which is the more fruitful venture. And I learned that the more money with the less stress is going out into the field to the farms, buying and selling cattle, right? So I sold off my lease because I was in debt. I sold off my lease and I started working on a business plan, a proposal. They call it speculation, right? Now, I took a trip from Mompoloki. I went to Kang to go and see a feedlotter. While with that feedlotter, I learned that we need to invest in the culture more than we need to invest in the project. So when you go out and take a loan or venture into something, as I believe you know very well, you need to be in it wholeheartedly. You need to live it. It needs to be a lifestyle.
I understand.
Yeah, so venturing into that introduced me to a whole new world I knew nothing about, or I knew very little about, rather. Came to meet with farmers directly, lived with farmers. Through failures, you'd get stuck, your truck wouldn't come, you'd get stuck, you fail. But through those failures, it's a learning curve.
Okay.
And it got to grow us.
We've got 10 points to cover on this broad subject, but let's start with understanding the culture. How do we understand the culture, and what have you come to understand by the culture of farming?
Firstly, I'd say we need to define the word itself, culture, which in one word, we could simply say, or rather we could simply come to the agreement that it's a lifestyle, it's a way of life. And that's culture. So unless you are completely absorbed by that way of life, you are not necessarily engaged within that society.
I'm with you.
Yes, sir, because that particular culture, it absorbs you, and it's a community. Right. So if once we establish that as that's a culture. Now, as a farmer, then you can understand agri or farming as a culture. It's a farming lifestyle. So whatever you do revolves around that farming lifestyle. Your basics are around that farming lifestyle, and so are your successes and your progresses. If you have a farm, right, and you're a farmer in agriculture, through this culture absorbed, you're going to build your house on the farm. It's your lifestyle.
It rotates around that.
Everything is within that compound. When you go, you visit the city. You don't visit the farm. You stay on the farm, in the premises. You visit the city to go get supplies. You come back into the farm. Just like our urban culture right now, we visit the outskirts.
You come back to your houses.
And then we come back to our urban culture.
So it seems to me that we need to, for you to be successful, you need to reverse the mindset. I mean, no more this part-time business of weekend farming, which is what Botswana have been engaged in. Am I right?
Yes, sir. To be successful in agriculture, we need to restructure the psychology, a person's understanding. Yep.
All right. I want us to talk about accessing the markets. Perhaps that subject we can deal in the context of your company, what your company does, and how you actually access those markets.
So what Tselayahwe Investments does,
Tselaya?
Tselayahwe Investments, it's not Tselayahwe, but it's Tselayahwe.
Show people how it's spelled. Trading and investment.
Which some would say, Bakhalakadi would say, Yahweh is their word. Basotho would say, Yahweh is their word. But it's Tselayahwe. Now, what we do, or rather, how we started off with online digital platforms to fuse and merge and simplify the trading of agricultural commodities. Because you'll have a market, but your problem will be accessing that market, right? So to get access to that market, there has to be a certain facilitator, which is our online platforms, which will be launched in a number of days. Yes, sir. Right? Now, in the principle of business, the existence of a product, right, is to satisfy a certain need. Right? But the success of that product is relying on the access to the consumer. So that access is very, very important, because when you penetrate through, that's where you've got a successful business.
And you talked of these platforms. Are they apps, and how do they work?
No, sir, they're not applications. They're websites. The reason why they're not applications and instead they're websites is because there's no rush to perfection. As they're websites, we first need to master some nitty-gritties on them, and also to acquaint people with them. Because for us on the back end, it's us collecting data, right? The moment we have perfected, or we have seen all the gray areas and polished them up, that's when they'll come off as applications, and not only servicing the Botswana market, but also going out, because that's the whole aim.
Let's just bring it down to the brass tacks, and let's make it practical. Let's talk in terms of me needing a bag of oranges, or for argument's sake, a box in a restaurant like this, needing a box of meat. How would you assist, and how do you provide the access to the markets?
Which one would you need? Meat or oranges or both?
Let's say I need both. We'll give both examples, I guess.
We do have presence on a lot of farms as farm managers. Re le badisa, re le balemi gape, in aid of our farmers. And there are those farmers that are independent, they just come to us and say, help us with the market. We give them online stalls and we facilitate the trade. So therefore, we've got a database and a rotation cycle. Now, as we're a restaurant here, Black, right, you need oranges. Or rather, let's use lemons.
Lemons, yes.
Yes, because we have been having lemon water.
Yeah.
Right? Now, lemons are not year-round. They're seasonal. It's a citrus fruit. So we need to harvest and hold, right? The good thing is that lemons are not perishables. They've got a shelf life, right?
Depends how you store them, isn't it?
Also, all depending on how you store them. But they're not as sensitive as Bodita Matian.
Okay.
Now, what would happen is that with our database, we know who's harvesting when. And because of that, when Black puts in an offer, I'd like a box, 50 kgs of lemons, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we can furnish because we know which farmer to contact. And by so doing, connecting directly, the farmer gets a greater value. And the distribution outlet, which is Black, gets to save on cost because they're buying and supporting the local farmer. Also increasing its market pool, which is how we access that market.
I've always wondered about markets from this point of view of every farmer wanting to sell to choppies or to, for argument's sake, any wholesaler, and then saying that those wholesalers are buying at very low prices. What is preventing farmers from setting up a farmers market like in other countries? When I was in Mauritius, there was a market, a vast market in the center of town where people were just coming to sell directly to the consumer. Never a question of some wholesaler buying at a low price.
Mr. Mogobe, farming Mogobe is an investment. It's a passive investment. It's not a lifestyle. If it was a lifestyle, your children would also be involved. When you're busy on the plantation, there is somebody out there at the market. I already said that flea market. It's the culture. The culture that we have, we are part-time farmers, which is why there's no 150% dedication to setting up a stall.
Well, we want to talk about food security through production as a third point we want to talk about. So connect that with what you're saying, that we're part-time farmers. How do we change the mindset at a practical level? How do we do it exactly?
The vision is big, it's large, but the start should always be small. Because farming is a business. It's a business. And through your journey as an entrepreneur, without failures or without having taken the first step.
Yes.
Right?
And plenty of those.
Absolutely. So now we start off small. We start off with a backyard garden, right? We've got certain programs that dissected about to include everybody and encourage everybody to utilize production as a form of food security. Because first and foremost, we'd say do it organically. The abundance, the leftover, we can now put it to the market. While you're doing it organically, right, it's consumables, right? And you're also learning how to maintain and sustain, which comes about to food security and sustainability. And then you can now export out of your property into the open market, or you can now transplant and go to the field because now you've seen the benefits. On a number of occasions, yesterday I was with a lady in her backyard.
Narakis and
Nachis.
nachis, yes.
Yes, sir. She sold nachis, which she's planted in her backyard. And now she's actually seeing the fruits of the labor, pardon the pun. And she's seeing the purpose of going large scale.
All right. Now, the government has always talked about food security. In fact, the previous regime specifically talked about backyard gardens, and some people were ridiculing the idea. Post-COVID, or in the context of COVID, do you think the idea is catching on? And if it's catching on, can you speak to that a bit more as to how you see it going from now on, now that COVID may have hopefully opened people's eyes?
It hasn't yet caught on, but it has been sparked. The seed has been planted, the tree hasn't grown. Right? For agriculture, COVID came as a blessing in disguise because it debuted the essence of agriculture and food security. Right? Now, there's always been talk, which was good advice, that guys, or rather, betu, let us venture into backyard gardens. And there were never reasons behind it to motivate. If there was a reason good enough, you would have probably started it yourself, right? Yeah, no. COVID came in and became the reason to say, okay, I have no choice. The borders are closed. There's nothing that you can import. If you do import it, go into your retailers now. Staple foods have gone up. So we don't have a choice but to produce, but we don't have the skills to. So what does that mean? It means that we have to restructure the psychological DNA by starting at home. Charity begins at home, so we have to do the backyard gardening. Now, for that to be successful, you need consultants, you need advisors, which is why we're there to practicalize it and not just preach it.
Let's talk about mentorship. Grooming through production. What is that concept, and how are you applying it at a practical level?
Mentorship and grooming is skills development and knowledge transfer. All right. Through my personal experience, I've never been a cattle breeder, but I'm one for now. Right. And this is through the mentorship I got from my clients, who started off as my clients. Now they're my personal advisors, right? They're father figures, they're brother figures. Which it not only goes now to just a simple element of grooming or mentorship, but also character development. To say, okay, in this culture, we are inducting you into the culture. This is the lifestyle.
Okay.
So the mentorship is very important because you're going to walk through a path that you've never walked before, but somebody else before you has walked through it. And that person, that should be your mentor to advise you, guide you, consult you. That entire absorption, we collect all the data and we share it with everybody else. Which is why I actually believe that the mentorship is a great part of grooming in terms of skills transfer, right? It's important and essential.
Let's talk about rehabilitation and intra-personal development. Rehabilitation normally is used in context where someone was on drugs and is being pulled back from that situation. You mean it differently here, obviously.
That too. Go to rehab, you have to labor to sort out an addiction. The purpose of the labor is to introduce a new addiction. Right? Go to prison, correctional facilities rather, right? Detainees have certain programs. That is to still keep their minds alive and active and introduce them to a new addiction, something more productive. Cultivating the land is a lot of work. Farming is a lot of work. It really it defers your mind from the norm, as we are now in the new norm. And that's how we come to psychologically restructure the mass communities by inducting them into the society of the farming culture through the intrapersonal development, and the rehabilitation. Rehabilitation, if I may just capitalize on rehabilitation, is not always negative. Right? For the mere fact that you've been doing something 21 times, it becomes a habit. Now, for you to let go of that, you need to be rehabilitated.
In other words, you have to unlearn some things and relearn some things, some new things.
Yeah, you just have to be willing to let go. You can still contain that lesson, but be willing to let go and trust in the process, because now you're in a new culture, you're in a new community, new
Does
society.
your company offer any courses or any training in that regard?
Yes, sir. We've got an internship program. We've got 3 farmers so far that have got 5 boys each. We're teaching them farm management. When they come from there, we set them up now with experience. And our target market, or rather our target rehabilitees, if that's a word, would be young men by they feel they don't belong in society. And because they feel they don't belong in society, they stray from the society, and keep one by due to the lack of attention. They don't qualify all male figures as men are trash and so forth. There's always a psychological reason that needs to be looked at. Right?
So how do you target these people and how do you identify them?
They're everywhere. An idle mind will tell you there's a problem. Unemployment is a problem. Not just there's no income, but what it breeds. When we come collectively, we're in a school. What's that conversation breeding? I'm staying in the city, I'm not working. I see my peer, he's working, he's living a certain lifestyle. I idolize it, I want it. How do I match up to it? Because I don't have a source of income. It's all about what it breeds. So now when we're breeding, we always need to go back to the root. We need to trace the pedigree. That's how we can eliminate the program.
So you didn't answer me whether there are courses specifically like training where you put them in a classroom or in a farm room or whatever to teach them.
Workshops. We're actually looking at starting workshops, right? But the courses that we so far have started are practicals. You go to an established farm.
You learn at a practical level.
1 month. Okay. You learn at a practical level. Your theory, you get it from the farm managers there. They're your mentors. They're the ones that groom you.
So is there money involved?
For the first month, no, you're not getting paid.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is because
you should be paying yourself. You're being trained.
Yeah, but aside from that, we'd actually like for you to volunteer. If you can volunteer to do something,
it's a good sign.
It's a good sign that you be dedicated.
So speak to the young men who might be watching. I think your camera is that one.
Yep.
And make an appeal. Somebody who may be unemployed, been frustrated in between jobs, but have some interest in agriculture, but doesn't know what to do.
Gentlemen, if I may say, or bafwe to majita, there's life out there, but you can't, you won't necessarily make it especially in these times. If Mr. Mogobe may just sponsor from time to time a venue, we could all come together and have a group discussions as we introduce you into the wealth creation program that agriculture offers. And these would be through lessons and teachings that we've also absorbed from Bomadala, Kodi Plasing, Kodi Timong, and so forth. Then we put them on the table and say, guys, we would advise strongly to venture into this. Because that's one way of actually standing your ground.
That actually leads to my next point, which is job creation.
Yes, sir.
How do you get them to actually be employed? Or
the job creation, if you're farming, you've created your own job. I believe a job is something that gives you an income. So if you're hustling and getting an income, that's a job, right? But now if you're farming and creating yourself an income, that's a job. If you create yourself a sustainable living, then my brother, you're never going to need to type up a CV again. And my sisters as well. Not leaving them out.
Yeah.
Right? This now, through agriculture, as an employee or an employment platform, right? The crime rate is also going to go down. I could put my head on the block for that. Right? Now, there are those individuals by that are dedicated and committed to employment. By they need to work. They can't do it on their own. They will not.
They need the predictability of a salary.
They need the security, right? Through this entire value cycle, we will capacitate those within the diaspora to say, okay, you're qualified in marketing. Here's a product for you to market. Here's a system for you to market. You're qualified in accounts. Do the books for this farm. There's a job in everything. Because, Mr. Mogobe, let's go back in time, right? The city, the urban area now, it used to be the marketplace, which is how the Khanti show was born, which is why the Pandamatenga show came about, right? All the farmers were there, right? At their own farms, focusing on their productions. They'd come together on one day to show off their productions and trade. It's all commerce, right? So the urban areas came about as trading facilities. That's how we absorb.
Initially, yes.
Yes, that's how we absorb the diaspora. We go back to the roots of the culture.
When you say the diaspora, you mean people in the rural and other areas, or you mean even throughout the world?
Throughout.
Okay. Now let's talk about community development as we head towards commercialization.
Community development can be broken down, right? Through rehabilitation.
Go back to that word again.
Yes, sir. Rehabilitation of a community, which is a large group. You could rehabilitate an individual. You could rehabilitate a large group. That's an entire community. Not only focusing on the infrastructural developments. They could happen where a cluster of people are living, which is also considered a community. So through the collective effort and the collective contributions of communities, or rather a society of farmers, via the culture.
Wow. Okay. Now commercialization. Obviously, all these efforts have to eventually be profitable.
Yep.
And have to be monetized sufficiently to be profitable. How do you go about that?
Get a farm manager from Telayakwe. Get a farm manager from Telayakwe, and we will commercialize, or rather consult you, advise you.
You basically look for the farm manager for farms who are employed by you. How does it work?
We produce. We engage the basic principles of the agriculture. We produce. We create the farm manager. Yes, sir. The farm manager goes onto your farm with a book, which this book is a report. When you get consulted as a member, being inducted as a member, you get a consultation, right? When you get a consultation, we have a checklist to get your objectives. For right? And then that's the objective, that's the mandate that we drive. But not only that, but to also multiply the sources of income from your produce. That's commercialization, making your farm hold not just a savings account, but a business that gives you a salary as well.
I understand. Now, diversified investment, are you talking about different areas of farming activity? Pastoral,
arable,
etc.
Yes, sir. It's not only about within the farm itself, with the commodities themselves, right? But diversifying your investment, for instance, when I come to 20, right? Mind you, your farm has to make money every day.
You have 20 cattle and then a drought comes.
The drought is approaching, right? We would advise you, okay, sell. Everybody would advise you, sell. Right? But then what are you going to do with that money? How's about you accommodate something, it's still within the farming sector, that can still go onto the farm because your entire lifestyle is within the farm. Again, back to the culture, right? Your entire lifestyle is within the farm.
Yes.
So why don't we introduce chickens for you? We'll manage that. Let's go for pigs. And then rotate all of that. Mind you, your money is not in a bank.
No.
Right? It's still on the farm. It's just that the investment has been shifted. But still through agriculture.
Because these smaller ones are less vulnerable
yes.
to drought.
They're drought resistant and they've got a quicker turnaround time. So either way,
Wow. And then, of course, when the drought ends?
When the drought ends, it's entirely up to you because either way, hey, after the drought, there's production. And now, because now you've got an alternative source of investment still on the farm, those are becoming their own businesses because right? So you don't need to sell them and go there. But you can leave the cattle alone and let them multiply. Now from there, right? Then you can, you sell them.
Yeah.
You go into property development. You go into real estate. You go into different avenues of investment.
Well, which leads us to the 10th nugget, which I want us to talk about. I want you to highlight the profit motive. Because in Botswana, we see those Hansi farmers dressed in khakis, and we know that they are doing well, but somehow people can't see themselves in khakis and running large farms. Help us deal with that and understand how the profit motive can be heightened.
Look, man, we all want money. We all want money. Some people never saw themselves in suits until they got their first paycheck. And that first paycheck bought them a shiny suit, a three-quarter suit, a three-piece suit, and that became the new norm for them because that's their culture. Now, if farming gives you a good check, you're going to get those khakis because your job entails your uniform to be those khakis. There's a reason why the culture calls for you to wear in a certain manner, dress in a certain manner. It's to accommodate the job that you do, which pays you. Now, there's more money at the farm in getting dirty, in creating money, than there is in working for money. Through agriculture, Mr. Mogobe, you're creating wealth, meaning that you're making money. Your farm is a money machine. You're essentially a central bank, you're manufacturing money because people will never stop eating. So for the mere fact that you're creating, you're producing food, you're making money, you're creating.
So really, in terms of success, the farmer should be at the top of the value chain.
Absolutely.
But why isn't he?
Intermediaries, the access to market. The access to market. If I have an access to market, I'm going to buy at a less price from you. Meaning that I'm going to export you. So that and then I'm going to sell it at a high price. So as a middleman between the farmer and the end retailer, what then happens? For the consumer, the price is extremely high. That's why the farmer can't really progress. But with access to the market, direct market, which is where we come in.
All right. As we conclude our conversation, can you look at the camera and share with the viewer how they can access you and what products, once again, you can offer to the market, and also, obviously, your contact details?
Yes, sir. You could go onto Facebook, Tsela Investments. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Tsela Investments. You will get the latest updates of the products that are on sale. particularly the livestock. Also, should you need to contact anybody that's the lines are down, send us an inbox. You're more than welcome. You could jump onto our website, www.tselayaGwe.co.bw, right? Telagwe.co.bw. Get a bit more information about what it is that we do. Give us a call, 766-284-32. Get a bit more information on what we do. There will be other notification avenues that will be circulating around, God willing. Partnerships will be struck. Propositions are on the table, right, to circulate and also to endorse each and every single farmer out there, right? Go onto YouTube, subscribe and like the Nuggets of Wisdom, because even through that, we are going to force our way onto the Nuggets of Wisdom to showcase some of our interns at their farms, to showcase some testimonials as well. This is through the endorsement of Mr. Mogobe and the Nuggets of Wisdom. We've hijacked it, eh?
Yeah, no, I like the hijack.
We'll also be showcasing indirectly some nuggets of wisdom from elder farmers that cannot make it into the urban areas, so that everybody is enlightened. We will also be sharing those also on our on our digital platforms, right, so that everybody has access.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing so much for the farmer and the farmer entrepreneur or the agro entrepreneur. It was one of those thrilling shows. I really had a great time. Let me acknowledge you and congratulate you for what you're doing. May you go from glory to glory. Can you go from level to level? All the very best, sir.
Thank you very much for having us, sir.